Let's work through this scenario together to help you understand the question. So you're being asked to identify the entries that should be posted to the suspense account to correct these errors. Now, please realise that in some questions like this, you might encounter transactions that don't actually require a suspense account in order to correct it. So the first transaction is an example of that. Let's work through it together. So we're told that an invoice to a customer for $1,250 was recorded twice in the sales daybook. Now, the sales daybook is a book of prime entry, and postings from the sales daybook are then made into the general ledger at periodic intervals. Now, it is the totals of these daybooks that are transferred, and without any additional information being given, we would assume that the totals are posted to the debit and the credit side of the correct respective T accounts. The mistake here is within the book of prime entry, which means when they're posted to the general ledger, both the debits and credits are overstated by the same amount. This transaction, therefore, doesn't actually require a suspense account to correct it. Okay, all you would do is reduce the postings in the general ledger for both the sales and the receivables. Let's move on then to transaction 2. Here you are told that a check written for petty cash of $400 was recorded in the wrong side of the cash book. Now, what this transaction is basically saying is that money from the cash or the bank account is periodically transferred into our petty cash tin. However, in doing the actual posting of this transaction, they posted it to the wrong side of the cash book. Obviously, with cash books, you either have inflows or outflows. If you're taking money out of the cash book to put into petty cash, it would be an outflow. But what they did here is they incorrectly posted it as an inflow. Now, the best way to deal with these sorts of scenarios is to think about a 3-step approach, which I refer to as did, should, and correct. In other words, what did this particular client do? What should they have done? And how are we going to correct it? Well, in this example, what we clearly see is money being taken out to pay into the petty cash tin. That would increase the balance on the petty cash tin, so you'd have a debit of $400. However, we're told that it was recorded on the wrong side of the cash book. Now, if money is coming out of cash to go into petty cash, it should have been a credit, but they posted it to the wrong side. So what they did is they debited the cash book in error as well. Now, the rules of double entry clearly are being breached here because we can see that there are no credits in this transaction. What that means is that the imbalance is clearly sitting on the credit side. There are too many debits at this point. So where does that imbalance go? Well, the imbalance is where we would think about the suspense account, okay? And it's currently on the credit for 800, which is obviously the combination of the two debits that have been posted by the client. Now, in terms of what they should have done, well, what they should have done is they should have debited petty cash, absolutely, that's getting the money, but then they should have credited the actual cash book or the cash account because that's where the money is coming out from. So in terms of correcting this double entry, how do we correct it? Well, whenever you have a suspense account under the did column, to correct it, you always want to reverse out what you've done. So currently it's on the credit side, so to correct it, we're going to debit the suspense by the 800. Where's the other side going to go? Well, clearly in this transaction, the entry to the cash book hasn't been posted. And we're also going to credit the cash book 800. Now, if you're wondering why is it 800, well, let's think back to what they've done. They've debited 400 when they should have credited. If you only credit by 400, all you'll be doing is cancelling out that debit. But you actually want to show that outflow. So you need to double up the amount, and that's why you're crediting by 800. Let's move on then to transaction 3 that we have in this question. So here you're told that the total receipts on one page of the cash book was undercast by 150. Okay, now when you think about what it means to undercast something, it means that it's been understated. Specifically here, you are told that total receipts have been undercast. You can imply from this that it means that income is understated. The debit side of the cash book should have been higher by 150. Now, the posting for the receipt is posted correctly, but it's just when they casted it down, they didn't add it up correctly. Now, the way that we can interpret this is to imagine a receipt of $150 and think of it as saying they posted the income side correctly, but they just didn't post the cash within the cash receipts correctly. So let's imagine this transaction. What did they do? Well, what they would have done is posted the receipt or the income credit receipt correctly, 150, but they have undercast the cash book. So this is like saying they haven't included this in the cash book. Now, if that's the case, we're clearly going to see an imbalance here. And that imbalance is actually going to be a debit to suspense for the 150. Now, what they should have done is clearly, if we think about it as an isolated cash receipt of $150, what they should have done is they should have debited the cash, the money coming in, or the cash book, 150, and they would credit the income receipt. Okay, let's change that to actually income just for completeness. Okay, receipt or income, whatever you want to call that, 150. Now, obviously, if we're going to correct it, we need to clear the suspense that was originally created. Now, here the imbalance originally was on the debit side. And what I said earlier is that whenever you have a suspense and you're trying to correct the entry, you always want to reverse what you have posted in the did column. Okay, so here we're going to be crediting the suspense, 150, and what we're going to be doing is debiting the cash or the cash book, 150, because the receipt or the income side of things has already been posted. Now you can quite easily see here that with both the transactions where a suspense account was required, you're debiting suspense 800 and then you're crediting suspense 150, which according to this question is option 4. I hope that helps you with your answer.